Hello friends, and welcome to Figure Study, where I have apparently not learned my lesson and am once again looking at a large combiner set. So this is going to be fun. Today we're taking a look at Tobot v Tank Guy and Iron Admiral that combine to make Great Iron Admiral. I think that's the name. But yes, these two are from the same line and released around the same time as Tobot v Big Trail and Troll, or Big Troll. I will start by talking about Great Admiral here. There are nitpicks I can make, like the fact that the robot mode head is not only visible, but like visible from the top, which is just unfathomable. It's so bad. I don't understand what they were thinking. Like if you're looking at it from an angle, you can't see it, but if you're looking at it from like even a remotely top, like if you're looking at it from above even slightly and from an angle that's not like this, you can see clearly robot head face right there, just poking out. There's nothing to cover it up. I've seen ways to kind of fan mode the Toki in the front here, which we'll talk about in a minute, to kind of cover it up a little bit, but like you shouldn't have to fan mode something to cover the robot's face in vehicle mode. I feel like they really could have done something, even if it's just like a little flap here that like flipped over or something like that. Like they could have figured something out. That aside, it's actually a pretty clean alt mode, aside from the glaringly obvious head in the top there, but also I genuinely adore this alt mode. This is like a giant space battle cruiser and it looks amazing aside from that. And I love this alt mode so much. The color use is nice. I like that it's just kind of this nice primary red with like little yellow accents here and there and these darker gunmetal-y grays throughout in a few places. And then just a little bit of black here and there and a little bit of white. And the white is primarily used for these little like runways and docking stations and things. And you've even got like little hangar doors that have numbers on them. There's a lot of really cool little details throughout that make this thing look just massive. And it's an interesting shape too. I like that it's kind of like a stick with these giant boosters hanging off the sides. There's something neat about that. Even around the back there's a lot of nice little details and more booster engine type stuff. It's very cool. I definitely am into this alt mode aside from the glaringly obvious robot head on top. Before I start looking at the Toki and going into transformations and stuff like that, we should probably do a size comparison because this guy he's big. Great Admiral here is probably the largest standalone Tobot / Hello Carbot / whatever else you want to qualify these things as that I own. It's, you'll see. Like, I can nestle a standard deluxe underneath its wing like a mama bird or something. It's that big. It's also a fair bit larger than Hello Carbot Ponymeister, which I think this is kind of the ballpark for the size of Hello Carbot figures, at least in their alt modes. It's also way bigger than Tobot v Troll, if you want to see how he compares to one of them. And if you want to see how he compares to the other one of them, he's also significantly larger than Big Trail. And so, of course, I'm sure it comes as no surprise that he's also significantly larger than the Duck Tank. So yeah, Iron Admiral is just massive. It's a massive alt mode. But it's cool. I think this looks really neat. I like the colors, I like the design, I like all the little detailing and the silhouette of it all. I even like the weird dragon-y figurehead that they put on the front there. It's just this. I really don't understand why they couldn't have done something about this. But anyway, I said we were going to talk about the Toki, so let's talk about that Toki. Now, both Iron Admiral and Tank Guy, this is what I was complaining about in the Big Troll video, where these two actually have a place to store their Tokis. As you just saw, Iron Admiral, you put the Toki in the front of the ship. That's what you do. That's what happens to the Toki. It goes in the front of the ship, it stores, it even like makes up part of the design. Why don't Big Trail and Troll do that? But it's a neat Toki. I will also give it that. It's a bit unwieldy, but it's kind of cool. It's like this big Chinese dragon type thing with like, more serpentine and no wings to speak of. I appreciate the Toki. There's some nice detailing, nice color. They painted the teeth white, which is really, really lovely. And again, I just appreciate the fact that the Toki has a place to go when it's in vehicle mode and also robot mode. Let's bring Iron Admiral back in here and do his transformations. So we need to pull this thing off the bottom here. So flipping this around, pulling up, pulling up, pulling. Let's go from here. Pull up. Really? Come on. Come on. There we go. So we pull this off. This then separates further. There are some little grooves here that go around these bits here. So that's how you can line that up. And then there are pegs and ports and all that. That gives you the sword and shield. I'm going to fold in these little fins on the giant boosters here. Slide the boosters forward, just to move them up and get this thing a little bit easier to keep on camera. Pop this back section up here. This whole plate kind of comes up on a hinge. Then we can pop this section up here, which will give us the ability to swing these bits out. This can accordion up, and we'll just leave that hanging for now. With that accordion up and out of the way, we can fold these red booster bits back, like so. And then these will slide in. And this is interesting. When these slide in, you can see that these bits actually come in to the foot there. And that will prevent these from coming down all the way. So it's you definitely want to slide them out when you're going into vehicle mode. Flare these out a little bit so that we can separate the legs. And we can bring these down, rotate the head up. And now this, we want to fold down these flaps here and on the front too. And now this can accordion all the way up onto his back. Rotate these yellow bits up, flip out his hands, and then bring his arms down and just bring the shoulders back up, and you can kind of adjust them however you may want. And now comes the tricky part, because it involves remembering how to do this. So for the Toki, we want to fold all of the feet back up, similar to how it was in the vehicle mode configuration. Flip the tail down and around like that, so it just goes under, tucks in. The upper body will flip around like this, and then basically you just want to rotate these so that all of the gray bits are pointed forward. And yeah, it's just tricky with the geometry here. So now all of those are pointed forward. Bring the dragon head down all the way. And this will slide into the chest, and there's a clip here that will clip in right here. And this is surprisingly very tricky, at least for me. I just have a hard time lining everything up. You kind of want to come under so that you can slide the frills inside this cavity rather than coming in this way, because things will kind of butt into each other. So slide it up and just kind of wedge it in there and hope for the best. It's like just weirdly tricky to do. There we go. Another thing that helps is lining up these little yellow tabs with the grooves in the gray bits for the legs there. So that completes the chest for Great Admiral. Last thing to do is flip up his little head crest, and there we've got Great Admiral in his robot mode, and he's pretty darn big. Also going to bring in his accessories here. His shield is pretty cool, actually. It's just a chunk of the ship, but it's a pretty nice looking shield shape. And this, there are these little clips here on the inside of this track here that will go around these bits on his forearm. Then it's not a super solid connection, but it holds. And then the sword, which also looks pretty good. Again, it's like a big chunk of ship, so I feel like maybe if this were a different color to make it seem more like a blade, but I like the shape of it. And I like that they did the handle in that kind of gunmetal-y color. But this just goes in his hand, and then you close his fingers around it. He doesn't hold it super solidly, like it's pretty wiggly, but it's not going to just slip out. Gravity kind of does the work for you, so you don't have to worry too much about positioning it. It's a pretty decent looking robot mode. I'm not as into the robot mode as I was his vehicle mode. He's neat in some respects, but then in other respects, he's kind of a pain. Like getting the Toki plugged into his chest is a pain. This shield just kind of, the shoulder gets in the way, so like it's very tricky to kind of move the arms with the shield on, and then it's kind of tricky to plug the shield on if the arms are in different positions. He does look kind of plain. You do get some of like the gray in the forearms here, which is nice, and the black up there, and a nice mix of yellow in the middle, but like there's just something, I feel like the red needed to be broken up a little bit more here. Also, his articulation is atrocious. I know Tobots, I don't really expect the articulation to be great, and the articulation being not great on this guy isn't a major turnoff, but it is a shame. Certain things I feel like, fine, whatever. He doesn't have thigh swivels, that's fine, but he can still go forward, back, in, out, and he does have knees. They're not super great, but, you know, he has knees. He has elbows, which is great. He can move his arms out, which is great. He's even got articulating fingers, but he has no bicep swivels, and he can't rotate his arms. He can't move his arms forward. You've got a sword and shield, which would make for some interesting kind of dynamic arm poses if you could move his arms that way, but you just can't. I feel like they could have worked a rotational joint in here. I think that could have fit. Articulation's not the big thing with these. It's just a little bit of a bummer just how limited this guy is, because like Carbots, I expect that kind of thing from more than Tobots. Tobots tend to be pretty good with that kind of stuff, but his arm articulation is so limited. Even freaking Rocket. And I hated Rocket's arms, but even Rocket could rotate his arms forward and backward. Also worth noting as we get closer to look at that head, the head does not turn. It does not turn at all. It can go up and down, kind of, but it doesn't turn because of the way it's done. Like you can see it's kind of attached to this platform that it rotates around, and that's not going to turn. I can at least understand why, because of the construction, that the head doesn't do what it does, but the other stuff could have worked better. But anyway, the head looks good. He's got this kind of big ornate helmet on, which I guess with a name like Great Admiral, this does kind of work for me. I don't know for sure if the helmet is meant to look like a particular type of armor helmet. It probably is, but he definitely gives off like a commander and an army vibe. The face is pretty nice. It's got like it's very humanoid, but like with harsher, flat robotic angles, which is kind of a nice aesthetic for any robot faces, really. And I like that they did that darker gray around the eyes before doing the eyes in light blue, because then it makes the light blue stand out a bit better when he doesn't have this giant thing going over his eyes. And I also appreciate that you've got white for the nose, mouth, and all that inside the darker gray, which is then surrounded by red. So like the color contrasts and mixtures up here are very nice. He looks pretty cool, if a bit sparse in places. It's just the articulation is a big bummer, and some of the design decisions they made with regards to his alt mode, in particular, the fact that his head is blatantly apparent, is a bit of a downer. But anyway, let's get Iron Admiral out of here and bring in Tank Guy. And don't worry, we will do size comparisons in robot mode for both of them, but I want to do the vehicle stuff for Tank Guy first. And now Tank Guy is absolutely the better of the two in this set. The tank isn't as cool in my mind as the giant battle cruiser, but it's still very effective, very neat. All of the components up here come together to make a very, very convincing turret shape. It doesn't actually turn, but it definitely gets the shape down. And there's a lot of nice texture and detailing throughout here, with a lot of things picked out in this kind of gunmetal-y color. And it's also nice that the treads are black, but then the wheels on the inside, the gears and mechanisms and stuff, are silver. It's a very effective tank. I definitely appreciate that. Blue is a weird color for a tank, but it still gets the point across. Also, his Toki is probably the best in terms of storage and whatnot, because it's right in here, and all it does is slide in and out. And it's not even really noticeable. You can put it in this way, which is where it goes for robot mode. That's a little bit weird looking, but I appreciate when you put it in upside down, as it's meant to go in for vehicle mode. It just kind of goes with the shape of the tank and the design of the tank. You don't really notice it very much. So yeah, I don't have as much to say about Tank Guy's alt mode because it's just a blue tank, but like I said, I love the texturing, the color work here. It's very nice. Now for the Toki, which will pop back out again. Move him off to the side. Toki is, instead of a dragon, a rhinoceros, and it also looks the part. It's got little legs in the back there, which are very cute. Kind of implied legs in the front there, but the painting's nice on it too. I like the separation, the black kind of going up here, but then the white stripes along the sides, and these gunmetal bits on the sides there. The light blue eye doesn't stand out that much on the blue, but it does still stand out. Also, he's got a visible head there, but the head is in the Toki and not visible in the tank mode. Since this is so easy to take in and out, just pop it back in there. And let's do vehicle mode size comparisons with Tank Guy, and this is going to be a little bit easier than with Great Admiral. Here he is with a standard deluxe, definitely smaller than Great Admiral, but it's still a lot bigger than a deluxe. Let me lower this a bit, and there we go. So here he is with Hello Carbot Ponymeister in vehicle mode. Here he is with his wave mate, I guess, Troll. They're both extremely bulky, but it's kind of like Tank Guy is a little bit more flatter and spread out, and Troll's a bit more squished up and compact. And after a little tripod bumpage, thank you Astrid, here is Tank Guy with Big Trail. Okay, time to turn this tank into a guy. A tank guy, if you will. So, I'm going to pull off the Toki and just put that off to the side for now. I'm going to slide the cannon out of place and put that off to the side. Next, these bits here in the front of the turret section will come up on a double hinge and just kind of angle those out of the way for now. Next, we want to pull the entire side of the tank out and up on this double ratcheted hinge here. And that actually pegs into place down here, and it clips into place up around here. So you want to disconnect that and then hinge it up. And oh, there's where it clips. Okay, it clips there, and then it pegs down here. So all the connectors are down in this section. With the sides separated out, now we can rotate all of this back, for legs obviously. And now here, this will hinge forward to separate the torso from the midsection. We'll split the legs, and this is a thing that I've seen people leave the flaps here out because I imagine it does give more stability and it allows for a much deeper knee bend. But I've always folded these in, and there's a bit of a resistance there. It may not be meant to do that, but I prefer to fold it in, and also there are little angles here for when he's standing with his legs separated, so I feel like it is intentional. And you can see even with these giant chunks of plastic going this way, it's still balancing. I'm going to rotate this down on both sides there. Oh, also, these can finish hinging down into place. And then these will rotate and can bring them forward a little bit, move the hands and fingers and whatnot, because yes, he actually has fingers. And before we finish, gotta come back here, and there are these little flaps that you can kind of pull out to cover up the gap back here. And that will also prevent these from being able to go all the way back. So it's something, I guess. Oh, and in terms of stance, I like to click the knees back on this hinge, because there are actually two hinges there. I prefer to click them back one to give him a bit more of a straight stance rather than a leaning forward stance. So I'm going to bring in the cannon again, and I've seen images both for the toy and the show, I think, like CG renders where they reattach the cannon to the shoulder there. And I like the idea behind it, but I don't like the implementation because it's just so far forward. I feel like if the cannon attached more like this, I would be more into it, but it doesn't. So rather than keeping it on the shoulder where I see all the time, you can actually use this peg or post, whatever you want to call it, here, and there are these clips on either forearm that you can clip it to, and that will give him kind of an arm cannon thing, so I like to do that. And lastly, we take the Toki, flip up the robot mode head, and then this goes in. It was originally like this for tank mode. It goes in this way for the robot mode. That clicks into place, and then you just move down the Rhino head, and that gives us our completed tank guy in robot mode, and this is very cool. I like this robot mode a lot better than the Admiral's robot mode because it's just more interesting to me. There's much more color breakup going on here with the silver, black, red, and all that, and the shins, and the white in the thighs, and all in the midsection, all the stuff going on in the arms. He could do with a little bit more red in a few other places, because it's kind of like just a little bit on the knees, that tiny bit in the midsection, tiny bit on the hinges there, but like I really like the color scheme, I like the color breakup, it looks good. And I also really like the proportions on this guy, because they are weird, but they're a good kind of weird that I really enjoy. Like the fact that he's got a more or less normal midsection and legs, and then these just enormous arms. There's something very neat about that. He looks like a bruiser, and I'm okay with that. Getting in close, a lot of the detail here is the same that we saw in the tank mode, with the exception of like the midsection here. Come on, Nico, you want to help? The head is a bit strange to me in that it's kind of a combination of elements from both Big Trail and Troll. He's got the kind of strange swept forward slope at the top of the head, only it's less pronounced that Big Trail has. But then he's got kind of like a almost vaguely Egyptian headdress style design to his head that Troll has. It looks good, don't get me wrong, and I like that you've got a decent amount of color separation here, where you've got a fair bit of black to kind of, like the black kind of goes around the lighter colors, and it helps them stand out from the standard blue that they've got there. But then also, weirdly, he's got this metallic blue stripe going up the center, and I don't really understand that because that metallic blue I don't think is anywhere else on this figure. It's fine, I've said this before, that like introducing new colors in the head I think are fine because it works to have it stand out color-wise, but I just don't know why that metallic blue isn't anywhere else, and I don't know why they had to paint that metallic blue. Yeah, that's fine. His head is a little bit flat, like squished down, but again, that's also fine. Also, I modded it. I went in and took the head apart so that it could actually turn. Because if you were to get Tank Guy, his head does not turn out of the box. So what I ended up doing was taking the head apart and trimming down the tabs on that post and like filing them down so that they would still keep the head from just sliding right off, but they now allow the head to spin around. So he can turn his head, yay. Just be aware that if you are interested in getting Tank Guy for yourself, his head does not turn on its own. You're gonna have to mod it. Anyway, let's move Tank Guy off to the side here, and hey, unlike Great Admiral, he actually fits without me having to completely break the backdrop. Anyway, here he is with a Standard Deluxe. Here he is with Hello Carbot Ponymeister, and he's not as tall, but I feel like he's bulkier. Here he is with Troll, and these are a couple of really cool beefcakes. Here he is with Big Trail. Here he is with the Admiral. You can see how big those two are together. And, oh boy. I still need to do robot mode comparisons with Admiral, don't I? Here he is with Ponymeister. And let's bring Tank Guy back in, because we still have to show them both with the duck tank. Okay, that was a lot of comparisons. Also, I completely forgot about the robot mode stuff for him, so I had to like transform a bunch of things back. Anyway, let's move Admiral off to the side for now and start with Tank Guy. So we're going to take off the gun, pull out Toki, straighten out his head, and then fold that down, flip this up, and then it will split down the middle here and reveal all this rather lovely detail. I particularly like the reds and the golds in there. That's just very nice. So with all that out of the way, let's move his arms up to get them out of the way, and we're going to disconnect the upper body from the lower body. You want to slide the lower body forward. Now let's start with the arms first. So we're going to split the torso in half, fold this section back up here. This will rotate down slide along here, along this track here, and then collapse like so. This bit here will come back up and slide forward, and then instead of collapsing, it'll just rotate around and rest down here. This bit here flips up to create the connector port. I want to straighten out the arms so that you can use the bicep rotation. And then I'm just going to flatten the hands out, and there we go. Do the same thing here. So flatten that out, straighten that out, rotate it, fold this up, bring it down, rotate it, slide it back, and collapse it. Bring this up, slide it forward, and rotate it down, and bring up the combiner port, combiner peg. For the lower body, I'm going to split that in half as well. Make sure that this bit is basically the legs are flush with the pelvis, and straighten that out since I did that like slight bend. Just make sure that's all nice and straight. Fold this flap all the way around, and it'll clip in right in there. Point the toe, come back here and flip up this little connector peg, and put that off to the side. Again, straighten that out, flip in the toe, flip this around and clip it in there, and flip up this little connector there, and there we go. Bringing back the Admiral, we're going to start by getting rid of his sword and his shield, so just take that off, take that off. While we're at it, we're going to take Tank Guy's cannon, flip out this little peg here, and this will peg into the shield on the inside there, like so. And that creates kind of a gun shield. Now we want to straighten out his arms. Make sure they're nice and straight. Flip in the fists. You can bring these down so that we can straighten everything out like this. Also want to bring this down so that we can fold these back flaps all the way up. Just the back flaps. And I'm going to bring in the Toki from Tank Guy, and this will clip right in the back here. It'll slide in, and there are these posts on either side here that'll clip in on either side there. So that slides in, clips in place, and now we can bring this back up. So that is that sorted. Now we're going to start with the bottom because it's always easiest to put the shoes on first. You want to take the lower halves of Tank Guy, and you want the folded in flap facing inward and the black part facing forward. These will just clip underneath the feet here, like so. And bring in the other one, clip that in. There we go. And next, you want to slide these down. You don't need to pull them out, you just slide them down, and that will kind of fill out the legs there. Now for the arms, on the underside of the arms here, there are ports. So you want to plug the combiner pegs up in there. You want the vent bits that you pull down, like all this stuff facing forward, obviously, with these flaps kind of on the outside, because where else would they fit? So plug that in. And this does not like to stay up. I'll adjust that later because it's just probably going to fall down again if I try. And this is up here. There we go. Accordion that back up. We're almost done. Just got to clip this onto his arm. And this is another issue that I have with this combination where the it doesn't, like, if you get it at the right angle, it'll be okay, but like if you don't get it at the right angle, this will not stay on for anything. And lastly, to give him the sword, all you want to do is flip out the thumb, and this handle will just go around the clip, post, whatever, on the thumb there, like so, and then close that back up. And now he is holding the sword. These Tobot and Carbot combiners are a real endurance trial, I swear. But yeah, here we have, in his entirety, Great Iron Admiral in his combine mode. And I wasn't really into this combine mode at first. It has definitely grown on me. I still think out of all of the different things, like the different alt modes, the different robot modes, the combine mode, I think Tank Guy is the strongest overall package. So I feel like if you were interested in Tank Guy, you really don't need to get the Admiral to go with Tank Guy if you only like Tank Guy. Tank Guy is strong enough to stand on its own. Admiral, not so much, but As a combined mode, it is very cool. It's definitely not going to take over the top spot with Big Troll, but still cool. Oh, one thing I forgot to do. These little decorative bits back here, you can actually flare those out once they're in position, so that is that. But yes, as I said, this has grown on me. I do like the overall look. It's just the integration isn't super great. I think the distribution of the colors is okay. You get a little bit of the blue down in the feet, but like only a little bit. It's primarily in the arms and then just a little bit behind the head there. Kind of would be cool if there was a little bit more of that red in Tank Guy and or a little bit of that blue in the Admiral to kind of integrate their color schemes a little bit more in combined mode. It's more like some of the engineering limitations on this guy that put me off initially, like the fact that you don't get a ton of posability in the arms despite Tank Guy having a decent amount of posability in his arms, just because you can't rotate the bicep when the arms are bent, which is kind of weird, and you don't really get much in the way of rotation up here despite there being a combiner port up there, because it just clashes with the backpack. And yeah, you can lower the backpack, but the problem with lowering the backpack is when this is kind of down and out of the way, it makes his shoulders look extremely thin and weedy. So yeah, you can rotate the arms out a little bit, which is not bad. I like that you have that kind of posability there, but what's going on up here is not great. Of course, you don't get anything new in the legs, and despite everything, you still can't rotate the arms forward. You can bring them forward here, up here to a degree, but like it's just not the same. And then this arm, in order to keep that shield clipped on, you basically can't move it at all, because if you start to move it, it'll just pop off. And also, again, he can't move his head, so you don't get those intimidating looking off to the side poses. One thing also that I do is kind of like a fan mode is bring the dragon head up and open the mouth, and I tuck this little beard thing into this notch down here. And I just feel like that adds a little bit to the combined mode just to change up the chest a little bit more. As I've been saying, it's there's some interesting stuff here, but just not as successful as Big Troll. You don't really get any new detailing either. It's all the same stuff that we saw from Tank Guy and the Admiral, just configured slightly differently. Anyway, let's move this giant thing off to the side so that we can do size comparisons. Here he is with a Standard Deluxe. Here he is with Ponymeister, and he's definitely bigger and bulkier than Ponymeister as well. Here he is with Big Troll. I gotta move this back even further. And yeah, Big Troll wins in the height department when you're going to overall where the plastic stops vertically, but Great Iron Admiral is actually a little bit taller at the head. Let's cap things off with our final size comparison. So here is Great Iron Admiral with the duck tank. And that is gonna do it. I'm done. I am done talking about Great Iron Admiral. And by extension, I am done talking about large, free and transforming robot toy combiners, for the time being anyway. It's a cool set. It is cool, and Tank Guy in particular is a very, very strong figure. I just, you know, this is weak, what's going on down here. It's barely even noticeable what's going on, and the integration is really poor. It's just like connector bits sticking out in the front for toes. The arms are much better. I like what's going on structurally, visually with the arms up here and having these kind of become shoulder pads. It's definitely things they could have done a lot better with Great Iron Admiral, but it's still a cool set. I'm still glad that I reacquired it. That has been my look at Tobot v Tank Guy and Great Admiral and their combination Great Iron Admiral. What do you all think of this set, or either individual bots? Whatever your thoughts, feel free to chime in down below. I always enjoy hearing from you all. And remember, art is more than meets the eye.